Grace Beeler, who was one of the editors of Before There Is Nowhere to Stand, and she'll tell you about the book, and she's going to read a couple of poems. Grace now lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. She's the co-editor of the anthology. She is the author of a chapbook called A Lineage of Light. Her work has been published in an anthology called A Chaos of Angels by Mothering Magazine, Poetica Magazine, and New Verse News, among others. So I guess those are different publications, right? And she has worked as an English as a second language teacher for adults, but is currently home, or actually in Bethesda, with her new baby. And she's trying to finish a novel based on her grandparents' escape from Nazi Austria. Please welcome Grace.
Hi, thank you so much for coming on this cold winter day. I'm writing a little article for my alumni magazine about the book, so I'm going to read some of it to you and kind of talk a little bit too. Just bear with me while I'm reading because I have a lot going on. I just want to tell you how I got to be here. So probably about 2 months ago, I was here in DC, and I took my 10-year-old son to the Holocaust Museum. And at the gift shop they sell this little metal brass thing that you can put in your pocket. I guess you're supposed to hold on to it and remember. It says, "What you do matters." I didn't buy one because I didn't need it. I have those words tattooed on the inside of my head. My grandparents survived the Holocaust. They escaped Austria in 1938, and they only made it out because they were helped, among others, by 2 Nazi soldiers. One who opened the cattle car door just enough for the 2 of them and said one word, "Jump." And the other who, when they were caught trying to sneak across the border to Switzerland, took them aside to execute them, and when he had them alone, told them how to get across the border. I want to talk about these 2 Nazis because I think it's really important. Even if you find yourself part of a great evil machine, it's never too late to find your conscience. And also, small acts of kindness have a huge effect sometimes. So my grandparents took those 2 lessons from the Holocaust. Growing up, and my grandmother just died 10 years ago. I had her all of my life. I never saw them walk past a homeless person without leaving something, never drive past a hitchhiker without picking them up, never refused any stray, human or animal, food, shelter, and medical care. And my grandma marched with her hippie kids against Vietnam and nuclear weapons, and I was a child of one of those hippie kids, so I grew up marching too. So if you're here, you probably remember Operation Cast Lead, the Gaza War, 2008, 2009. Israel was bombing Palestine, and for the first time that I can remember, NPR had a reporter that was on the ground telling stories, and I had my clock radio set to the news, so every morning I woke up to hearing people screaming, being bombed, and I would walk around with my stomach in knots, just feeling horrible for all day long. So after a couple weeks of that, I talked to my Aunt Joan Doby on the phone. She was another one of those hippie kids. She was a grandmother by now. And we started talking about what was going on. We both felt terrible. We felt helpless. We felt like we had to say something, do something. We felt like we didn't know enough to do anything. So I said to her, you know, as descendants of Holocaust survivors, we have a stronger voice. And she agreed, but neither of us knew what to do. My grandparents were very secular Jews, and my grandfather was a doctor and moved the family way up to upstate New York as part of a doctor relocation program. Joan was the only Jew. They were the only Jews in town. When I was growing up, we had a synagogue maybe 45 minutes away from my house, but we never went to it. My grandparents were founding members, but that meant that they gave money, not that they went. They were just trying to fit in, to try to be American, to forget everything about being Jewish. And I started to realize that I had been turning off. When I heard the news about Israel-Palestine, I would stop listening because I thought, that's not me. I'm not doing that. So both of us felt terribly ignorant, and Joan said, what about a poetry anthology? She's been a poet for 30 years, taught poetry classes in her house and put together a lot of books. She has a small independent press, the Unforgettables Press. And I thought, well, okay. I had a lot going on. I was teaching full-time English to refugees, to adults. My husband was in grad school. My son was only 6. I was trying to finish a novel. I didn't really feel like I had time, but I felt like we had to do something. So we split the $60 that it takes to put an ad in Poets and Writers magazine. And then we got flooded. We had, instantly, we had an amazing book. People maybe were just waiting for something like this to come along. We got not only amazing work, but from poets who were far more published and much more famous than we were. And in fact, even now, sometimes when I look at the, try to look at the credits in the back, I slam the book closed before I get too intimidated by who we have in the book. So we soon realized that we needed a bigger publisher. Joan's Unforgettables Press was so small that what she would do is put books together and run them off at Kinko's. We couldn't really be running them off at Kinko's with this quality, so we had to find a bigger press. So we shopped around, and eventually we found Lost Horse Press, who took us on, but said that the manuscript was much too unbalanced. We had way too many Jews, not enough Palestinians, and not enough Arabs. So we tried first to contact all the Palestinian poets that we could find. We didn't have a lot of luck. Some of the poets felt like they didn't want to be in a book that was that unbalanced. Some of them were tired of just burnout with failed attempts at reconciliations. And a lot of people said that because there was a cultural and economic boycott on Israel, they didn't want to be in a book that included Israelis as well. So eventually, one of our translators, Ed Moran, called the press and said, what's going on? Why is this book taking so long to come out? He had translated a couple of the young Gazan poets from Arabic into English. And so the editor told him, and he had a lot more connections than we did. He helped to get more Palestinian poets and more Arab poets, so that now the book is more or less balanced, at least in number of poems, if not completely in the balance of the poets. Here we are, more than 3 years later. We have an amazing book. It's beautiful. I have some copies over here, and if you feel like you'd like to read along, you're welcome to grab one. If you're pretty sure you want to buy it, you can leave $20 in my stroller. If not, take it, have a look at it, put it back. I don't care if you unwrap it. That's fine with me. If anyone would like one, I can grab it for them. Just raise your hand.
Somebody else thinks it's just not afraid to be here.
That's going to do that. So I still feel terribly ignorant, but a little less so than I started out. That was one of my main goals, is maybe if we have everybody talking together in the same place, we can start to understand. People from one side can read people from the other side and have a little bit of empathy and understanding. I also feel like we sort of, we didn't know it at the time, but we were part of a new movement of the Jewish left, places like Jewish Voices for Peace and even J Street, who are starting to feel like we have to use our voices as American Jews to say something, to do something, to try to broker peace. I've been meeting recently a lot of Jews who've dropped out of Judaism because they just feel like they can't be part of this, and I think it's more important to use your voice. My mom is one of them. My mom is allergic to Judaism, so I'm just sort of finding things out on my own. It's helped me to become a little bit more political when this was happening. I went to go see my representative, Maurice Hinchy, as part of a delegation, and I was with a bunch of Catholic workers, and when I told them that I was a descendant of Holocaust survivors, he said, "Nice," which I think meant, thank goodness I can go back and say, here was a descendant of Holocaust survivors, here was a Jew who was standing up and saying, we need to work on getting peace. We need to stop, at least stop this bombing. We have to do something. So here I am. Thank you so much for coming. My hope with this book is that people will take it and use it as a teaching tool so that people from both sides can understand what it's like to be on the other side. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is get the word out to professors in programs around the country and around the world. So if anybody feels they can further that, that would be great. I'm going to read 3 poems. The first one is called Collateral Savage by Lahab Asif Al-Jundi for Lebanon 2006.
What page?
It is on page 221. Thank you for reminding me. I'm reading this because I feel like he's speaking to me. Survivors of the Holocaust, please, talk to me. Help me understand. Do you sanction what's being done in your names? I thought your spirits grew more gentle, having lived through the unspeakable. Bombs are not less lethal or evil. Stop being so deadly afraid of the other. 1,000 eyes for an eye. Children of the Holocaust, please do not lash out as if you lost your sight. The second one I want to read is on page 59. It's Live from Gaza, from Vivian Sensor. And Vivian wrote, in lieu of an introduction, we asked her to write an introduction. She said yes, but then she said no, and she wrote us a letter telling us why, and she eventually allowed us to publish her letter saying why she wouldn't write the introduction and to keep her poems in the book. So this is one of the poems that she sent us. Vivian Sensor, Live from Gaza. Cats nibbling slowly on your flesh. There is all of you to eat, and all the time they need. 20 hours I'm watching you bleeding, and then stop breathing. And at this moment eaten too. Your brother's body next to mine shivering, losing blood. Father, call 101. Father, get an ambulance. Officer, I beg you. I'm watching my second son die, and you can let the ambulance in. Radi Ani Yaba, are you pleased with me, Father? I want to die knowing that you are pleased with me, that the days I made you mad have not stayed with you, that my playfulness never hurt you, that I am in the grace of God a son whose father is pleased with him. Forgive me, my sons, I screamed. I called all news agencies. My voice was even broadcast on live television. I even pleaded that they would let me try to walk. I would have carried you on my back. The distance between your life and your death was only 1 kilometer. But the distance between my begging and the soldier's heart was infinite. And I heard you too, Father. All the way from Saudi Arabia, I saw you and Ibrahim and my other brother, Qassam. I saw you, Father. You were pleading. You were scraping the gravel with your skin. You were on your knees. Your voice was loud and clear, live from Gaza. My eldest son just died in front of me. My other son is bleeding to death. The ambulance is here. Call on Israeli soldiers to let them in. The hospital is near. Let me at least walk. I heard you, Father. You were loud and clear, sitting in my living room. I watched you on live feed. I was one of the millions in their living rooms watching the live report from the ground in Gaza. The only difference was I knew your face, my brothers' faces. I recognized my brothers' left toes as they were photographed like petrified wood in a forest. I recognized his mole that no one noticed. Live from Gaza, Father, I saw you between two dead bodies and a military commander collapsing into tears. Forgive me, Father. I was in my living room. Forgive me, Father, they would not have let me through. Forgive me, Father, I was over 1,000 miles away. And I heard you too, Father, when the phone rang. All the way from Saudi Arabia to Washington, D.C., my brother told me our brothers are dead. Our father is in hospital. And we are not allowed back in. Live from Gaza, Father, I am here in the heart of the American capital, lobbying senators, calling human rights organizations, speaking on radio shows, sobbing as I speak. Can I bring Ibrahim back? Can I bring Qassam back? Can I even be let in to give you a hug from one of your remaining sons? Security reasons. Security reasons. Say that you and I are a security threat. The farm you raised me on is a security threat. My brother's feet, the songs we sing, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, even our kisses are a security threat. Father, what do I do here? From the heart of D.C., I cannot even swim from this shore to the Mediterranean Sea. I am a security threat, Father. My loss could make me angry. My loss could make me mad. My loss, Father, could make me crazy. My loss, Father, could make me into a terrorist. I throw my diplomas and certificates away. Father, I never belonged here. And when the good people say of this land come to hold me, they say, I'm so sorry about your loss. What do I say, Father? Which loss? My brothers? Your tears? Or the heart that has been carved into pieces? Father, I answer them. I say, I know you are good people. I want to stay faithful to what was taught, treat people with respect. But Father, I am a security threat. My respect, my lack of respect, the mere fact that I am from Gaza, Father, negates the fact that I am the son of a farmer, the son of a fisherman, the humble man of the sea. My identity, Father, is a Gazan, and when people look at me, they judge me with the lies they know. Palestine does not exist. Palestine is not a country, and your people are angry people. Why do you hate us so much? Live from Gaza, nothing has changed. I've been released from the hospital, but my 2 sons are dead, and the other 2 are in exile. Luckily, the last one is short. It's on page 228. Hannah Stein, body parts. Outside a market, a foot lies on the ground. An arm, skin leathery and suntanned, or slack with blue cables of veins. The freckled, the spotless, the hairy, the smooth. A rabbi in a long coat and black hat picks them up. He will save them for burial with the dead, so that on the last day no one will arise without feet, arms. The rabbi puts them together in the plastic bag, mixes defenders with attackers. At the last day, all will stand up together. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, our next reader is Bonnie Morris. Bonnie earned her undergraduate degree in Jewish history from American University and her PhD in women's history from Birmingham University.
Binghamton, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Binghamton. Since 1994, she has taught women's studies at both George Washington University and Georgetown, and she is now the author of 9 books, including 3 Lambda Literary Award finalists: Eden Built by Eves, Girl Real, Revenge of the Women's Studies Professor. Her essay on Israeli food, Devour the Darling Plagues, won 2 literary prizes in 2012. Her first volume of poems won the Finishing Line Press New Women's Voices Prize for 2012 and will be published in 2013 in the Schoolgirls Atlas. Please welcome Bonnie Morris.
Hi, Salam Alaikum, Alam Aslan. I'm really happy to be here. I'm local. My family moved here from Los Angeles in 1974, and I went to Montgomery County public schools. I have a paperback book on the table that's a tribute to all the old movie theaters of Bethesda that are now drugstores. I know. I just like to share that I'm the daughter of forbidden love, and I'm the daughter of a Jewish mother and a Welsh man. There's a group that doesn't get a lot of press, but they have a nationalist struggle too. Kids used to be beaten in school for speaking Welsh. I had an interesting life growing up because I passed as someone who didn't look Jewish, and I was able to hear what people thought about it and what people thought of my parents. And my whole family is a border crossing. My brother married a Filipino woman. My cousins married Mexican, Chinese, Greek Orthodox, Mexican, and who am I leaving out? And then there's all of the lesbian cousins. So we all are witnesses to love crossing borders or not recognizing them. And the first piece I'm going to read to you, which is mine, is from some of the poetry slams I've done with the group Mother Tongue, a women's spoken word group here in D.C. I've been on their board for 12 years. I'm the old girl on the board. So this is a little sexy, just warning you, and then I'll read a couple other pieces by others that are perhaps more chaste. This is called A Poetry Slam with God. Oh, 182. God, up there in her underwear, slammed down her glass, shook her angry ass, and said some bad shit's come to pass. For Jerusalem's red from the bleeding head of the running child, and it drives her wild. And she says to me, hypocrisy, how can you sleep the dreams you keep where once the land was soft with sheep? Now there's no fleece, no sister peace, and each angry nation pours libation, sends an all-male delegation. God up there yells, tell me, Bon, what tab of ecstasy were you on when you lived there at age 20 in that Israel of plenty, made love with a Jewish girl, lived with her and touched her pearl, and thought you were so radical, that junior year sabbatical. God says, so, you were a dyke? Mazel tov, that's what I like. But who stood on the West Bank Ridge protecting all your privilege anytime you felt the call to go pray at the Wailing Wall? Guys with guns, Israeli sons, and daughters, sore of war to core. God says, Bon, when you were young, did you ever wrap your tongue around a nice Ramallah girl? Now that is rad. And wow, too bad you never walked into the road of Arab women's lover code. Well, I'm twice as old as I was then. I thought I knew it all back then, and will I see that place again? Bon, everything you thought you were is not enough to honor her. All right, so that one's mine. Everyone awake now? Yeah, okay.
Guess the ladies like that.
Yes. And now I'm going to read on page 95, Susan Martin's Global Warming. My husband, a born extrovert, tried small talk as an icebreaker. Do you own this shop? He asked the shopkeeper, or do you rent it? 90 degrees outside on the Via Dolorosa, inside the trinket shop, North Pole frigid. "Sir," he replied, "I do not own this shop, nor do I rent it. I am a teacher. I do not make enough money to support my family, so I must supplement my income by working here." "Really?" I said. "I'm a teacher too." Call it détente, call it global warming. No longer were we Jew and Muslim, American and Arab, Zionist and Palestinian nationalist. We were colleagues with a common enemy. Together, over steaming cups of coffee, we did what teachers do best. Bitch, bitch, bitch. Well, I can so relate to that one. We had similar experiences too. Okay. And this is called, on page 71, Holy Landers by Lahab Asef Al-Jundi. "Listen, you are fighting over a land that can fit with wilderness to spare in the panhandle of Texas. You're building walls to segregate, splitting holes till little is left, killing and dying for pieces of sky in the same window. The olive trees are dying of embarrassment. They have enough fruits and pits for all of you. All they want is for you to stop uprooting them, sending your children to die in their names. Listen, your land is no holier than my backyard. None of you is any more chosen than the homeless veteran panhandling with a God bless cardboard sign and the light of Mecca and San Pedro. Draw a borderline around the place. Call it home for all the living, all the dead, all the tired exiles with its dust gummed on their tongues. There are no heroes left." And then on page 13, Sima Atala's gift. "One afternoon you tried to give me Jerusalem. Knobby onion domes, purple windows stained with God's tears, carrot juice, cobblestones, your girlhood ringlets, sunny laugh, the very gates of the old city so faithfully embroidered. It was impossible, too precious the gift, too short the time, or so I thought then. You suffered like Jerusalem and left us. Now I think of your finger, the one that clutched a live wire the day you nearly fell off the roof, the pinky forever clenched and scarred, stunted, a lifeline that never healed. Decades later, oceans away, I want to tell you, I have it. The gift you tried to give me, I found it. It's been with me all along. Jerusalem, like a blue bead embedded in my tongue. Jerusalem, like a rock in the pit of my stomach. Ring who metal digs into my skin, ache under one rib, which never goes away. Jerusalem, the pain cross-stitched into my heart with a needle that pierces both ways, going in and coming out." Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next up is Judy Kronenberg. Judy's third book of poetry, called Shimmer, was published by World Tech Editions in 2012. Her most recent prior collection, full collection, is Light Lowering in Diminished Sevenths, winner of the 2007 Litchfield Review Poetry Book Prize, now available in second edition from Antrim House, and I believe it's for sale. Her most recent chapbook is Ghost Nurseries, Finishing Line Press, 2005. Her poems, as well as her occasional short story, personal essay, and review, have appeared in many print and online journals, including Calyx, Cimarron Review, the American Poetry Journal, Innisfree Innisfree Poetry Journal, Natural Bridge, Poetry International, Spoon River Poetry Review, Women's Review of Books, Pedestal, Literary Mama, Under the Sun, and Borderlands. Texas Poetry, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
I'm mangling this, right? Her poetry has been included in more than a dozen anthologies, and she is a lecturer emerita, Department of Creative Writing, University of California, Riverside. Please welcome Judy Kronenberg.
I am really thrilled to be here in more than one way. I'll tell you a tiny bit about myself since we seem to be doing this. My father came out of Nazi Germany in 1934, the year after Hitler came to power, and lost his sister and her entire family because they couldn't leave, were unable to escape. My father was a very tolerant man, but I can't say that my mother was. And like many Jewish immigrants, she had a very strong feeling for Israel. But my life took a new turn, although I have to say I was always concerned with the underdog in my own way. When my daughter developed a tremendous interest, as part of her interest in the underdog, in the Middle East, in the Arab Middle East in particular. And because of her, I was able to travel to Syria before the present horror, and to Egypt many years ago, and to learn a lot, a great deal, for which I'm very grateful. So, a little bit about me, and that's enough. I'll begin with a couple of poems of mine. The first one alludes, it's on page 148, and it's called Clean, and it alludes to a variety of events in the news in the past. Gaza, Lebanon, Iraq, and for this reason there are a variety of quotes, air quotes, I'll have to have air quotes, for example, of august memory, Donald Rumsfeld. And there's an epigraph, so clean. And the epigraph, Crime Scene Cleaners Incorporated, homicide, suicide, accidental death, truck seen on the freeway, May 2007. Let them come like priests in white robes and tenderly cleanse the buttocks of the 4-year-old who shat in his pants, pressing his ears against the scream of F-16s flying low over Gaza. Order them up for the smashed skull at Haditha, the intestines spill out of back wounds, the graffiti-scrawled house where democracy assassinated a family. Let them restore the accidentally killed children fleeing on the road from Marwahin, obeying blasting loudspeakers into their deaths. Order them up for the spattered mall, the hall, the checkpoint, the crossing, the wall. Order them up for the broken-necked girlfriend left to drown in their tub by the returning Marine. Order them up for his crazed pain. Let them, with utmost respect, take down the 3 smart, creative, committed prisoners who hanged themselves with bedsheets and clothes in Guantanamo, their act not desperation, but warfare waged against us. Let them remove the bindings around the necks, the plastic bags over the heads. Let them wash out the shot-through mouths of men revenged. Let them relief the Golden Dome. Let the war presidents and prime ministers and militia leaders, for whom war is holy or righteous, abstract, mathematical, even joyous, somehow made clean in the mind, be each given 1 small toothbrush and the sentence, scour this blood. One more poem of mine, when I find the page. It's on 109. And it came out of a reaction to the war in Lebanon in 2006. And I have to say, this is the poem of an American. It's the poem of someone at a great distance from these events. This war. On my car radio, NPR reports the funeral at Jerusalem's military cemetery of a soldier killed in the fight with Hezbollah. His classmate, speaking in lilting English, sounding philosophical, praises the dead boy's love of hiking, love of country, ultimate gift. His uncle says his nephew understood the war was a matter of his country's life or death. His commanding officer translated matter-of-factly and roundly as if giving a recipe. praises his modesty and enthusiastic participation. And I feel how repeated and repeated and made ordinary by repetition these gestures are until, from another planet, his mother's voice rises from the wellspring of pure grief. And I hear grief thickening her Hebrew so that even the flat translation vibrates with it. My Yonatan, my own tears spring with hers. I have loved you from the moment you were born, and the windshield blurs. I think of my own grown American children, and my stomach clenches stop. Yet there is this brief, strange exaltation of pain ascending through the ceiling of the day into rarer air, an exaltation of being pulled up short by the ultimate, a terrible Hollywood aura of war movie glamour that deadens the boredom of the quotidian, the boredom of my current run to the supermarket for orange juice and a rotisserie chicken for dinner. A tiny, bitter nub of attraction I squint my eyes against and rub out. It can't be that luxurious frisson, can it, that makes a mother say, oh, I'm going to stop for a second because there's something I must tell you. I didn't realize, I forgot. And I'll go back to the poem. There was a woman in the news at the time of the war in Lebanon that really, really touched me. It was a terrible story. Not only hers. Her children were killed in the Israeli airstrike on Kana. An apartment house collapsed. And there were many other children killed as well. And I heard her, what she said, translated on the news. And it was extremely disturbing in several ways. It can't be that luxurious frisson, can it, that makes a mother say, I'm not sad about my kids, now they're martyrs in heaven? That makes a dry-eyed commanding officer approve the sacrifice of youth, powerlessness, or pride then, propaganda? The romance of a meaningful death must be so brief. I roll my cart past robust vegetables, refreshed with mist, and remember reading what that Lebanese mother first said, her tongue dust-heavy in the galloping dust of Kana. She heard one of the babies pinned against her back in the rubble cry, but she couldn't move. She thought Fatima and Rokhaya, still warm, still lived. Here, I leave the clear and beautiful aisles. I take home my cold, clean orange juice, so sweet in a dusty throat. My glistening chicken dripping into its plastic pan. Though I am ashamed to love them, because Yonatan's mother cries, because there is only dust in Kana, because my own children are so safe, for now, on an American coast. Okay, I'm going to read two poems by Samuel Hasso. The first is on page 192. Samuel Hasso also writes about Kana, and his poem, in a way, is also about distance and closeness as well. And the title has a multiple layer of meaning. Suffer the little children. Just 4 months into history, Sarah speaks in key of squeaks while reaching for her rattle. Nothing distracts her but a televised explosion followed by screaming. Her father mutes the screen. The screams sound louder in silence. Powdered by bomb dust, remnants of children litter a street in Kana. Rescuers bundle bodies and bits in oriental rugs for burial. I turn away to gaze at Sarah, sucking on her rattle. As image overlaps with image, bomb dust seems to whiten her cheeks. I make a face to see if she will laugh. She waits until my face becomes my face again, then blooms into a grin. The silence keeps on screaming. And another poem of Hasso's on page 107. which I think is an answer in a way to my poem, This War, but also there's a little bit of overlap. Intifada. Singly at first, then doubly, then slowly by the 10s or 20s, then steadily on. Interviewed about the death count in Ramallah, one sergeant said, "We'll kill them all, but we'll never forgive them for making us do it." Later, he aimed his Uzi at a boy armed with a stone and a slingshot. One general claimed his soldiers fired only rubber-coated bullets. When asked about the difference to the dead, he frowned and shouted, "Their leaders and parents are using these children as human shields." Despite the contradicting photographs, pundits and lobbyists concur. After all, who could deny that boys with all their lives ahead of them would happily seek execution? That mothers love to see their sons in open coffins? That choosing a brave death instead of a lifelong one was an option for fools? No one would claim that occupation to the occupied resembled daily suffocation. No one would add that suffocation or the fear of it begot a courage born of desperation. No one compared it to the fate of being locked in darkness in a stalled elevator underground. Like someone buried upright and alive, anyone trapped there would stop at nothing. And I need there to be a little hope, although this present moment is rather dark. So I will read Alicia Ostraker's poem, What is Needed After Food, on page 15, which refers to a time in the past, but still it suggests the possibility of hope. There is a long-ish epigraph from Yehuda Amichai. What is needed after food? The darkness doesn't war against the light. It carries us forward to another light. In my land called holy, they won't let eternity be. They've divided it into little religions, zoned it for God zones, broken it into fragments of history, sharp and wounding unto death. That's the epigraph from Yehuda Amichai, who, like Mahmoud Darwish, is the sort of national poet. And so beautiful it cracks the bones, especially Jerusalem with the luster of her stones, the hurt in her eyes, and our dreams for her children. A triangle, beauty, despair, hope. The whole mishpacha pulling 3 ways at the same time, like the people in so many families. Fighting but joined at the hip. Or call it a sandwich. Despair the filling, embraced by the bread of beauty and hope. Like a manna we eat every day, sent from above. While on earth, in Jerusalem, my friend's husband and son relax from a Sabbath meal like well-fed beasts, happily slumped watching the aftermath of a game where the Nazareth team has just won and vaulted from the bottom of their league to the top. The players have stripped off their shirts, hugging and dancing, circle dancing, belly dancing, waving at crowds in the stands to make them cheer louder. The coach strips his shirt from his hairy barrel chest, climbs a wire fence, wobbles and waves his hips. When someone asks how he feels about his team, a mix of Jews, Muslims, and one Nigerian, he himself is Druze. He punches the air and roars, "I beat them all! I beat Arafat! I beat Sharon! I show them we love each other." We watch a while. The celebration is still going on when we quit to go back to the kitchen, where loaves of beauty and hope stand on the counter and the cup of despair goes on the shelf. My friend and I, we don't ask for much. We read Amichai. We're not messianic. We don't expect utopia, which is, anyway, another name for a smiling prison. But love is a good idea, we think. Why on earth not? Simple women that we are. Simple mothers cleaning up the kitchen after one meal to make it ready for the next.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, our next reader is Rick Black. a book artist, Pushcart Prize nominee, and International Haiku Award-winning poet Rick Black is both a poet and a publisher. He lived in Israel for 6 years, first studying towards an MA in Hebrew literature at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and subsequently working as a journalist in the Jerusalem Bureau of the New York Times. He has written and handcrafted a chapbook, Peace and War, a collection of haiku from Israel. Is that for sale? Which is for sale. That draws on his own experiences as a reporter there. He lives and works in Arlington, Virginia, where he runs a small press dedicated to haiku, poetry, and fine art. Please welcome Rick Black.
Thanks very much, Mike, for this introduction. Can you hear me, everybody? Okay. And just for organizing this whole thing, none of this would have happened, certainly not without Grace, and Mike is responsible for the afternoon here today. I have one poem in the book, so I'll read that, as well as 4 other poems. And the poem that I would like to start with is actually connected to the weather. It's on page 233, and it's written by David Gershator, and the name of the poem is Bad Weather Blessing. Thank God for bad weather. Let it be a blizzard. Let it freeze. Let it thunder. Let it blow. They're predicting a storm. Snow on the high points from Galilee's hilltops to the mountain peaks of Samaria, even the summits of Jerusalem. Let children play with snow. Keep people indoors. Keep cars off the roads. Keep people busy, keeping warm. Bad weather is a blessing in the year of too many stones, bullets, suicide bombers. Let there be snow on the mosques of rage. Let weapons be frozen. Let there be snow on the synagogues of revenge. Let everything remain on icy hold in nature's ceasefire. If bad weather could only last for a year or 2, it might cool things off. Footprints in deep snow might lead the way. Let peace come from the north with more bad weather to cool things down, to give peace a chance, if there is half a chance in any kind of weather. And the next poem I'd like to read is my own. It's called Bougainvillea, and having worked as a reporter in Israel for 3 years over there and covered enough demonstrations and bombings and every other kind of thing. I was there during the first Intifada and the first Persian Gulf War. And I just never really found journalism. I needed a way to express what I was seeing and encountering all the time. And journalism always kind of left me wanting. There are only certain things that editors are interested in. Have to do with facts, but not with a greater sense of what's going on. So this poem's called Bougainvillea. Page number is page 4. Candles are not yet aglow like sapphire. The braided challah is still uncut. Quiet beckons, and the last number 18 bus is packed. People are returning from Machane Yehuda, the outdoor market of Jerusalem. Inhale the scents of cinnamon, cardamom, and curry, piled high in mounds. The barrels of pickles, sour and half-sour, the pickled herring, creamed herring, matches herring, and piles of fresh dates, smooth and sweet, and chocolate rugelach and babka, oval sesame rolls, challahs with raisins and hot pita, and crowds shoving, bustling, hustling, bargaining, shouting, mobbing, elbowing each other, shuffling along beneath the bare electric bulbs, hanging, suspended like the lights of the George Washington Bridge, above the Dukhans. Malafaphone, 40 shekel, tutim, fresh strawberries, pilpel, peppers. Dressed in strimals, flowing robes, silk skirts, pushing baby carriages, schlepping plastic shopping bags, speaking a melange of tongues, Hebrew, Arabic, French, and German, English. Shoppers ebb and flow like waves rushing and receding from shore, from one merchant to another. They gather like flocks of seagulls, then disperse past the green-leaf clumps of garlic, bulbous clumps, dry, hard like the noses of passers-by, bright, shiny eggplants, globular. Go ahead, imbibe the scent of fresh-cut oranges, tongue the bits of chalva, gently press the avocado skins and squeeze the tomatoes at dusk on Shabbat. And taste the loaves of challah woven into the prayer shawl of our people's history. Emitting plumes of black diesel smoke, the bus leaves the market, stops at the central bus station, and chugs up Mount Herzl into the ethereal, blood-soaked air of Jerusalem. And there, in the fading, tarnished light, descending on the city and the Jerusalem pines, just past Yad Vashem, there, the bus, its red and white sides gleaming, clinging to the hill stubbornly and climbing up it like bougainvillea. There, the bus explodes, skewering flesh, shattering glass, shrieking in the quiescent streets and sobbing. There, overturned like a beetle, helpless, writhing, unsilent. There, like a crushed violin, its mangled strings twisted, notes shrieking in the sky. And the ambulance as well, holy, 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 and the pines in the golden Sabbath sunlight, for candles will soon be lit, glow ineffably, more beautiful than ever. And God remains in his own way, silent. We are near Ein Kerem, Ein Kelohenu, Ein. There is no God like our God. There is no king like our king. There is no redeemer like our redeemer. And the angels cry in the ambulance as well, and survivors lie on the pavement, wounded, having fallen back down in the Bethesda street. A violin strings broken. But if you listen carefully, perhaps you'll hear wind in the pines. Perhaps you'll see starlight glisten off shattered glass and off bougainvillea petals that are still climbing, reaching up in prayer. The third poem I'd like to read is by Naomi Shihab Nye, and it's called My Father on Dialysis. And I identify this poem for a lot of reasons, but one of which is because my own father was on dialysis for 13 years. My father on dialysis wrote a book about, it's on page 168. My father on dialysis wrote a book about Palestine called Does the Land Remember Me? He wrote it in longhand on scraps of paper as his blood filtered through the big machine. He was not afraid to watch it circulate. Nurses and aides asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Planting a garden of almonds and figs, dipping sprigs of mint into glasses of steaming tea, breathing the damp stones of my old city, pressing my mind into the soul of an olive tree." And I'm doing a book now of Yehuda Amichai, who's one of Israel's great poets, and doing a bit of research at the Library of Congress. I've been watching some interviews with him and listening to some of his readings, and I just want to share one short comment that he had in an interview. He says, so actually, every poem is a lament, a little lament, a eulogy, even if it's a happy poem, because you remember something, only if you have lost it. They're just some thoughts. This next poem is by Rachel Barenblatt. It's called In the Same Key, and it's on page 41. They come together to bury their father in the cave where Sarah's body lies. No one imagines the vaulted church turned mosque with painted ceilings, or the synagogue or metal detectors to keep armed men from getting through. Isaac and Ishmael wash him with water and sprinkle sand on his eyelids, so his visions in the world to come will derive from the land he loved. Isaac's memories of having a brother and then losing him without explanation. Ishmael's memories of aching thirst before his mother saw the spring go unmentioned. The bones of their past buried beneath the drifting sands. Outside the cave, the women wail, two families grieving in the same key, not yet the ancestors of enemies. Abraham's dark eyes in every face. And the last poem is another one by Naomi Shabnai called Shoulders, and that's on page 251. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him, no car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say fragile, handle with care. His car fills up with breathing. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he is doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Our next poet could not be here today. His name is Sam Hamad. So I'm going to read his poems for him. His bio, Sam Hamad is a nominee for the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry, a PhD from the famed Iowa Writers Workshop where he taught and studied. He's a critical political writer, a healer, an editor, a professor, a spiritual, multifaceted, and interfaith religious Muslim leader who ran the Islamic Center here in Washington, D.C. He founded the internationally acclaimed Third World News and has taught at Princeton, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Howard, and more. Hamad's work has appeared in over 100 anthologies, and I'm going to read his 2 poems. So the first one is on page 142. And it's called Sabra Shatila in Sorrow. It is nothing, the blood red into stony ground, nothing. We can say nothing. The flares, red and white, blue, nothing against black sky, faces blur, nothing sharp, rope cuts into his wrists. It is nothing, slash of knife on throat, gurgling, knowing nothing, phalangist, Israeli. We hear phalange not spoken, It is in the face, frangia, Jemael. It is nothing, mustache moves, nothing. These words, nothing. Thunk, thunk of bazookas, crunch of bone, nothing. It is nothing. The children run hiding under the bed like play. A man comes in, they say nothing. He laughs, tells them they'll be safe. Nothing, no sound. He shouts, "Come out!" Nothing. He lifts the bed, their big eyes open. He laughs. His Uzi sputters. They are nothing. Their flesh, nothing. Oh, it is nothing. Do not worry. They are nothing. It is nothing. Do not worry. Nothing has happened. Nothing. It is nothing. Say it is nothing. So be peaceful, brothers and sisters. Do not run away. We are all Arabs. We will do nothing. It is nothing. We do nothing. It is nothing. It didn't happen. If it did, it is nothing. Oh, it is nothing. Nothing at all. And now say it and believe it. It is nothing. 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 Oh God, nothing. Next poem is on page 54. There must be something dangerous about a zoo in Rafah, Palestine. Just yesterday, the Israeli tank came forward into the zoo, firing round after round. The cockatoos screeched. The macaws went wild in their cages. Screen wire smithering into thousands of shreds of death, piercing the 2 a.m. night air, sending the raccoon into panic as his leg sliced open, and the monkey's arm went limp with the crunch of his tree. Hundreds of parrots were caught in a large net and whisked away in a cab of the bulldozer, while another tank shell shattered the night air, caving in the roof of the keeper's workshed, where Mohammed Juma had worked for months creating a zoo for the children of Rafah, the only recreation in this nightmare of Israeli destruction, where children weren't allowed to go out fearing Israeli snipers. Old Lady Khamis wanted to stay in her house, bulldozer grinding toward her. Finally, her daughter dragged her, screaming, from the falling wall that covered them both with cuts and dust, shattering memories, creating new sorrows. But this zoo, there must have been something dangerous about this zoo, something that worried the Israelis. Perhaps it was the smiles it brought to the children's faces. But now, the fox has run off, Juma says, but no one has any idea where. Probably dug in behind an old shell hole, shivering from the shaking ground as the tank grinds up the last of the bird enclosures. The bulldozer grabs and grabs and grabs, pushing the entire scraps of the defunct zoo into the swimming pool. The macaws cry out mournfully, covering the wailing of women, sobbing of children, the rage and frustration of Juma as he picks up what is left of the sign that says, "Welcome to Rafah. Welcome to our zoo." Can we have a hand for Sam? Okay. So you must be wondering what this Italian-American is doing in this book. Well, I guess we could say that I'm Palestinian by marriage. My lovely wife is sitting right there. But seriously, I've been in many anthologies. This is the one that I am most proud of to be in, because I think it's the most important one I've been in. I'm going to read you my two poems. The first one is on page 249. And I'll have to give you guys an Arabic lesson for this, for those of you who don't know Arabic. So it's called Sunday Morning Amman, and the Arabic I'm going to teach you is pretty simple. Ibn Khal, which means maternal uncle, and it's a term that Muslims use. Maternal cousin, I'm sorry, maternal cousin. And it's a term that Muslims use to refer to Christians, sometimes. Ibn Am, which is paternal cousin, and is often used to refer to Jews. Ibn Ard, which literally means son of the earth, but is translated into wanderer. And Ahlul Kitab, which means people of the book. And the book, of course, is the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran.
What page?
And we are on page 249. Sunday Morning Amman.
That's not.
251.
Yeah, it's not.
That's interesting. My book says 249.
We have an older imagination.
Okay. Well, maybe my oranges from Palestine finally make it into the book. Because it's listed, but it's not there.
Sunday Morning Amman is 251.
All right. Well, for those of you with the new edition, it's 251. I have it in 249. Here in Amman, the church bells ring. There are Christian people here. They are our brothers. They are Ibn Khal. Here in Amman, on Al-Farabi Street, amid umbrellas and T-boys and photocopy machines, there are Palestinian people here. They have come to renew their lives with passport, ID, and staff in hand, and amber garments, the color of time. They are autumn leaves thrown on the wind. They are our brothers. They are Ibn Ard. Here in Amman, the Muazzin calls. There are Muslim people here. From minaret to minaret, a chorus of voices touches the soul. From steeple to steeple, a chorus of bells gathers the souls. Bells and voices mingling, rising over the city, crying out to God and the occupied land. And holy Jerusalem, where Christians and Muslims, Palestinian alike, and Jews on the West Bank, they are all Ahlul Kitab. Jews on the occupied West Bank, they are our brothers. They are Ibn Am. And the other poem, I believe, is on page 134. So you can tell me differently.
This one is correct.
This one is correct. I don't know how this poem got in this book because it's really about the Iraq invasion of Kuwait. But it's here, so I'll read it. And it's called Dirge, and there are 5 sections, so what I'll do is I'll pause between each section. Dirge. Once we could look at the sky. Birds would flutter from roof to bough, their tiny voices the clicking of cool pearls. Plush clouds would roll by on ambling afternoons, sometimes like floats on parade, and when we least expected, the rain would come, a sudden celebration, a swell of slick black nylon dripping plump silver raindrops like joyful tears when the bride and groom first kissed amid a shower of white rice and cascading confetti. Once we could look at the cool blue sky. The best measure is to have the proper protective clothing and gas mask. If these are not available, you should move as quickly as possible into a building. Seal windows and doors, reduce ventilation, turn off AC. Stay in the room with the lowest airflow. Breathe through a dense towel, or better yet, use towel wrapped around a dry piece of charcoal. Impervious clothing, such as raincoat and tight goggles, can help. Head and body hair should be covered. Do not leave the building or open any doors to the outside. Chemicals will disperse in 1 to 2 hours. After the chemicals have dissipated, quickly leave the area of contamination. Do not pick up items from the outside. I remember the Kurds. There's a picture in Time magazine. Faces frozen like porcelain dolls, carelessly laid. Unknown, forgotten folk, sleeping now, peacefully at last. What had they done to deserve such immortality? Their villages, I hear, were once filled with song, the flute and the tambourine, children dancing at the wedding celebration, clean, bright costumes whirling around their unsuspecting lives. Do you remember the Kurds, their national song silenced, cottages flattened, bodies strewn like matchsticks along the roadside, that strange, imposed sleep? All that's left. One day, the soldiers came. It was Fajr, or just before. So much has happened, I can't remember. But what we heard was not the azan. What we saw was not the sunrise. Birds dropping from trees, yellow clouds blistering the sky, cats, dogs, people choking. Where do I run? Where are the children? When the shooting was over, when the radio station went off the air, when days, maybe weeks had passed, and our food supplies ran thin, we got in our cars, shot straight for the desert. An old Bedouin guided us to the border. He knew every dune, every wadi, like the wife he had loved since his 16th year. It was his way of serving, he said, would do so till they shot him. May God protect his gentle soul. We sit and wait. Will the sun rise tomorrow? Will the birds sing their song? Despair, hope, wonder, so many stories to be told, so many yet to be born, so many never to be known. Will anyone hear? Will anyone ever really hear? Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our poets who traveled far and wide to come here. And thank you to Grace for putting all this together.